Trump faces a hurdle in banning mail-in voting, his own Republican Party. Introduction. Donald Trump has made mail-in voting one of his fiercest political targets. Since his 2020 defeat, he has repeatedly claimed, without evidence, that absentee ballots cost him the presidency. Now he is pushing further than ever before, vowing to abolish mail-in voting nationwide through executive order if he returns to the White House. But his plan is running into a surprising obstacle: resistance from his own Republican allies. While his base cheers the move, many GOP leaders fear it could disenfranchise core supporters, trigger legal chaos, and backfire politically. The struggle highlights a recurring tension in Trump-era politics. His instinct for sweeping, headline-grabbing action often collides with the practical realities of governance and electoral strategy. Trump's renewed call to end mail-in ballots. In a Fox News interview earlier this month, Trump once again blasted mail-in voting as the biggest threat to fair elections. He even invoked Russian President Vladimir Putin, claiming Putin told him, "Your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. It's impossible to have mail-in voting and have honest elections." Soon afterward, Trump posted on social media, "No mail-in voting except for those that are very ill and the faraway military. Use paper ballots only." His stance is nothing new. Since 2020, Trump has insisted that absentee ballots enable fraud. What is different now is his insistence on a nationwide ban, framing it as the ultimate test of election integrity. The numbers tell another story. According to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, nearly one-third of Americans voted by mail in 2024. Millions of Republicans, including seniors, rural residents, and military families, relied on the system. For them, eliminating it would not be reform but disenfranchisement. Republican leaders push back. Trump's threats may thrill his most loyal supporters, but Republican leaders across the country are not falling in line. Michigan House Majority Leader Brian Posthumus, a Trump supporter, admitted flaws exist but rejected elimination. "My view on vote by mail is that it should be permissible. But I believe the way it exists now in Michigan is the highest risk for fraud." Vermont GOP Chair Paul Dame agreed that Trump's rhetoric goes too far. As Trump often does, sometimes he overstates his case. "I don't think anyone supports a complete elimination. That would disenfranchise men and women overseas." South Dakota Republican Chair Jim Eschenbaum was more blunt. "We can't get rid of vote by mail because we've got military serving, and if anybody deserves a vote in our elections, it's the people that are willing to die for us." The GOP message is consistent. Reforms are acceptable, but a full ban is not. Can a president ban mail-in voting? Trump has floated the idea of abolishing mail-in ballots via executive order. But constitutional experts say that would almost certainly fail. States control their own election procedures, and while Congress can set some federal standards, no president has ever imposed voting rules unilaterally. Even Republican lawmakers are uncertain. Michigan State Senator Jim Runestad admitted, "Whether he can do this by executive order, I don't know. What the potential legal hurdles are, I don't know." Legal hurdles would be massive. Lawsuits would immediately hit the courts. States like California and Colorado, where mail-in voting is entrenched, would resist fiercely. The Supreme Court has historically sided with state authority in elections. And in Congress, Democrats have already vowed to block any restrictions. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer promised, "Any measure making it harder to vote will be dead on arrival in the Senate." Evidence versus allegations. Trump continues to insist mail-in voting is corrupt, but years of evidence contradict that claim. Election officials use barcodes, ballot tracking, and signature verification to secure the process. Fraud is rare and usually detected. The Conservative Heritage Foundation's database shows only a few hundred fraud cases nationwide between 2020 and 2025, an insignificant number compared to hundreds of millions of ballots cast. Republican officials have also vouched for the system. Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, a Trump ally, has defended absentee voting, saying it works well with few problems, though he supports reforms such as stronger voter ID. The political risks for Republicans. Banning mail-in voting may look like a way to weaken Democrats, who lean heavily on absentee ballots. But the reality is more complicated. Seniors, military families, and rural voters, many of them Republican, depend on the system. In Florida and Arizona, the GOP has spent years encouraging early and absentee voting as part of its turnout strategy. Eliminating mail-in ballots could suppress Republican voters as much as Democratic ones. Some GOP strategists quietly worry that a ban could cost them close races in battleground states. Trump's exception for the military vote also exposes a contradiction. If mail-in ballots are inherently fraudulent, why are they acceptable for troops abroad? That inconsistency could weaken his argument in court and in public opinion. The GOP's broader election laws agenda. Since 2020, Republicans and state legislatures have passed dozens of new election laws, tightening voter ID rules, limiting drop boxes, and restricting ballot collection. These changes are popular among the GOP base and framed as election integrity reforms. But Trump's national ban is far more radical. It goes beyond reform into outright elimination, a step too extreme even for many Republicans who support stricter rules. The divide reveals the party's dilemma: how to balance Trump's hardline demands with the practical need to keep their voters engaged. What comes next? The battle over mail-in voting will remain front and center heading into the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential race. Democrats are preparing to defend absentee ballots as essential to voting rights, casting restrictions as anti-democratic. Republicans must navigate between Trump's hardline stance and the risk of alienating their own voters. Trump's influence ensures the fight won't end soon. Even if his executive order fails, his campaign against mail-in ballots guarantees that election rules will remain a flashpoint in U.S. politics. Conclusion: Donald Trump's push to ban mail-in voting is as much about politics as policy. It reflects his belief that absentee ballots cost him the presidency and his determination to reshape the voting system in his favor. But his plan faces steep resistance, from constitutional limits, from Democrats, and even from Republicans who fear alienating their own voters. The debate captures the essence of Trump's role in modern Republican politics. His power to drive the agenda is unmatched, but his most extreme ideas often crash into the realities of law, strategy, and practicality. As America heads into another election cycle, one thing is certain: the future of mail-in voting is not just a policy question, but a defining battle over how, and by whom, American democracy is practiced. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.